Well, it's already on the way.
I'll take it.
It says here for the next 90 minutes. So it's your cisgender white men. What I missed the whole time.
First started seeing what I could do. Yeah, well, we see what I could do. I bought a number of years. And kind of with free domain. But like they're not saying it. Yeah. You have to go for
Yes, I have that
my computer's
This picture represents my
How are we doing on our bell ringer? Who needs more time?
I need a lot.
5 minutes. Then we gotta do other things.
Why?
Because we're learning something new today.
What's new?
We're starting to do.
God's not good.
Well, it goes along with your ecosystem.
Just write about the
I want to see Ready Player One.
So, what's happening?
Picture?
I think Avery, that's just a ninja.
About my life?
If this was in the movie, it's gonna be.
I think it's going pretty well.
Because
Starting a project.
we just got done with.
Do I have to be?
Oh, I have to see where they're
No,
going.
it's just unless.
If that's better.
You never like,
When we get
That sounds really true. Good, good, because you were.
here's what I do. Yeah, or like launch pad right there.
I wish you could sit back here so I could go.
So we made
Bell ringer's done?
That was you have a problem with that? Chances are.
You guys are shot. Chances was.
Look at Jason.
Wait, are you? I mean, I don't know what you say. It's the small So what's the number? Is it 2
If I'm discussing this, because it's gonna rain.
It's not making
Oh my god.
It's still going.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah.
Wait, in baseball, if it's going foul ball, so if you try to catch it and touch it,
They're all.
automatically.
Hey, if you're not done with your bell ringer, that's okay. We're starting a new project today, so we're gonna have work time in class. So if your bell ringer is not done, you can get it done here in a little bit. But now, we have a survey that we're gonna fill out. It should be on your Canvas. I want you to pull that up.
Too busy looking.
It could be.
Take a second, look at the questions. We're gonna be watching a video on the TVs. I'm not gonna stop the video at any time.
It's the boob tubes.
Look in.
Just clarifying.
If after the video, I'll either give you guys about 5 minutes to work, or you can watch the video again. We can decide after the video's over. Okay?
Just leave your kids on. We don't.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years, that the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. As soon as that happened, the birds started. the number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behaviour of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion, the channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilised the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilised that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Alright, so just really quick, can I get a raise of hands if you want me to play the video again? I will. I'll try to avoid the wolves howling at the beginning.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened at the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years. But the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behaviour of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. And here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behaviour of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion, the channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilised the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilised that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Still not done with the survey, that's okay, because you can rewatch the video on your own. Can I have you guys pull out your notes as well? We have a couple notes we need to take today, and then we're going to discuss our new project, and then we have the rest of the time of class to work.
I'm sitting back here.
Please still sit up here.
Bring me your stuff.
So, we already started talking about our ecosystems. We did our ecosystem tour. So now we're going to look at how animals interact, such as in food chains and food webs. So our key concept of our food chains and food webs is food chains and food webs model the flow of energy in an ecosystem. If at any time during the notes, if I'm going too fast, just please let me know. A food chain, is a model that shows a sequence of feeding relationships. So, a food chain follows the connection between one producer and a single chain of consumers within an ecosystem. So, a producer. Does anyone remember what a producer is? They make their own food. So what would be an example of a producer then? Say it again. Not worms. Jonas? Plants. So on our picture, we have our grandma grass, which is our producer in this case. Then we have our desert cottontail, which eats the grandma grass, which is why we have that arrow pointing between the two of them. And then we have our Harris's hawk that eats the desert cottontail. That is showing our transfer of energy. That is our food chain. Every consumer eats the same kind of thing. So these are the lists of our different consumers that we have. So our first one is herbivore. Herbivores eat only plants. What would be an example of a herbivore? Cows. What?
Vegans? No, those are.
Okay. Anything else?
Zombie vegans?
Because how cows eat, they chew the grass and they swallow it and they bring it back up.
They have three stomachs.
Chew their vomit essentially. It's good.
That's gross.
They got three stomachs, which
Okay, so moving on then. Carnivores eat only animals, or you can think of animals just as meat. So, what would be an example of a carnivore then?
Ants. T-Rex.
Yes?
Human being.
T-Rex? I wouldn't say human beings.
Cannibals.
Okay, a cannibal. What about animals?
Fox.
Shark.
T-Rex, shark, lions,
A goat.
goats are not carnivorous.
How would you know?
Snake.
I don't think I've ever seen a goat eat
I don't think you've
another.
ever seen a goat.
Lies.
Well, they wouldn't be carnivorous if they eat something else because they eat majority plants. Praying mantis, they eat each other, yeah. Lions. Okay, so what if
Praying mantises eat each other after
they do? So now omnivores, they eat both plants and animals. So omnivore, you can think about a human, unless they are vegetarian.
Or a cannibal.
No, not a cannibal. Let's get off this cannibal weird thing. What about other kinds of omnivores?
Omnivores? Let's go.
Got a little sad.
My dog.
Cats.
Vegetarian.
Cats.
My dog.
Yo, boy, vegetarians.
They eat that. Black bears.
Bears, yes.
My dog.
Cats,
Cat.
yes.
Specifically cat hip.
My dog.
Dogs. Okay, then detrivores. They eat dead organic matter. So they just eat dead animals essentially. So
Animals do that.
vultures,
Ravens. Wait, we do that.
vultures do.
Fungi.
Right on,
Yeah.
we do. We eat dead animals. We are dead.
But we also eat plants. These types of animals eat dead organic matter.
Ravens.
If I slaughter a pig, it only eat take the rest of my life.
Female
Like,
brain.
Yeah.
What's a Jew?
You're offending.
And then last,
I'm a Jew.
guys, we need to focus back.
Okay, sorry.
Last, we have our decomposers. Decomposers are detrivores that break down organic matter into simpler compounds. Worms would do that. They also have a picture of a mushroom or a fungi up there. They also do that.
I see.
Why is there a scorpion?
Because a scorpion is a carnivore.
I see.
I'm going to is a scorpion actually stab itself in the head? Is it that? Stab.
Next, we're going to go into specialists and generalists. Specialists are animals that only eat mainly one type of food, otherwise a very limited amount of different foods. So, an example of a specialist would be a koala. What do koalas usually eat?
Bamboo.
Not bamboo, that's pandas. They usually eat eucalyptus leaves.
Told you.
What about sloths?
Sloths eat each other.
I would need to look and see.
I feel like they would eat each other.
Yeah, it's like,
Are you really good?
it takes a really long time to like.
Battle to the death.
And then, boys, and then we have our generalists, and these are consumers that have a varying diet. For generalists, we can usually associate them with omnivores. Yes? Yeah? So, would you think that?
I don't think I needed to erase it.
You'll see it in a second. So next we're going to talk about trophic levels. Trophic levels are nourishment levels found in a food chain. So this is why I needed the board. So I want us to look at our trophic levels like this pyramid that I'm going to draw here on the board.
Stop talking about the Illuminati for like 30 seconds.
So our first thing on our trophic pyramid are going to be our producers. What did we say producers were?
Plants.
Plants.
Plant. It starts with the plant. Why?
After producers, we have our primary consumers. These are herbivores that eat our producers.
No. What do you think I told you?
Also, guys, I want you to draw this pyramid because we're going to be adding other things to it as well. So, our primary consumers eat our producers. Next, we have our secondary consumers. These can be carnivores that eat our herbivores, or our primary consumers. And then last, we have our tertiary consumers. These are also carnivores that eat our secondary consumers. Third.
Yeah.
Well, the other one above that level is quaternary.
Yes.
I mean, it's fourth. No, we're not doing that one. You can if you want to. Uaternary. This one? Tertairy. So, in regards to omnivores, such as humans, like we said, they can be at different levels on our pyramid here. So let's say we have a vegetarian, I guess.
Do it.
So, if vegetarians eat plants, where do you think they would be here on our pyramid?
Primary.
They would be our primary. What if I were to eat meat, like cow?
Secondary.
Secondary. So it depends on what we are eating directly.
What if you eat a cow and cows are planted in the sky?
Wait. Would Connor be really cannibal? What if I did a cow that's
Then you just take pictures.
Okay, so do we want to do an example of filling out our pyramid together? Do we think we get it?
We got it.
I got it.
Alright, so now we're going to look at how energy transfers up our pyramid. So, down here at our producer level, I have it as 1,000 calories. Basically what you're going to do as you go up the pyramid, you're going to divide this number by 10. So, how much energy would our primary consumers get then?
10,000. No.
Divided by 10?
It'd be 100.
It'd be 100.
Then 10, then 0.
10,
No,
and then it would be 1.
No 0.
So cannibals only get 1 calorie?
Of what they got from the other person, yes. Not, it won't always be like 1. You could have a bigger number here at the bottom, like 10,000.
So you're saying the best diet would be a cannibal diet?
I'm not saying that.
No.
But you're inferring.
No.
Because they're at the
Producers consume the least.
and they're only 1 calorie, so like you won't
Say it
be
again.
happy, do you?
So producers who have the most energy. Yes. Well, think about producers. They make their own synthesis.
I will never eat again.
There's no other.
Actually, the sun.
Well, I mean, all
Sun gives energy.
Yes, but then they make big foods.
Well, it depends on
So, our last part of our notes is our food webs.
I think that's just shut here.
The other.
Food webs show a complex network of feeding relationships. An organism may have multiple feeding relationships in its